Hello, beautiful and rational people. I am Varun Gupta, the host of YouTube's very own Autistic Skeptic. I am 24 years old, and in December 2019, bittersweetly the year that COVID-19 began, I graduated from the University of San Francisco, one of the only 28 Jesuit colleges in the United States of America. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in history, the other in psychology. Now, I was diagnosed with autism at a very young age. As you can tell, the specific type of autism that I was diagnosed with was high-functioning autism. This is because autism is on a spectrum. I was simply lucky enough to fall on the quote-unquote high end of the autism spectrum. For those of you who don't know the full details of autism, it is essentially a learning disability that affects language and or social skills. I use and or because just because an autistic person has deficiency in language skills does not mean that he has deficiency in social skills, and just because he has deficiency in social skills does not mean that he has deficiency in language skills. I was quite blessed that I don't have significant difficulties in either social skills or language skills. I mean, sure, I do have my quirks. For example, I like to write on the wall. I like to repeat stuff. This process is called echolalia. And I engage in a lot of behaviors that non-autistic people sometimes find weird and don't really expect me to engage in. Now, I did not allow my autism to prevent me from writing my very own fantasy sci-fi novel. That's right, I wrote this novel, publishing it before the good old age of 18 years old. I started writing this novel in the summer after my 7th grade year, the summer of 2009. I spent 1.5 years, that means the entire 8th grade and the first half of my freshman year of high school, writing the first draft, and then throughout the second half of my freshman year of high school, my sophomore year, and my junior year, I edited this thing up to its present form, publishing it before I turned 18 in the September of my senior year of high school. The title is The Tale of the Walks. My pen name is VK Green. Of course, the basic premise of this story is pretty much the same as the premise of many other fantasy stories, good guys versus bad guys. But what makes this novel unique from stories such as Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter, etc., is that the main protagonist is autistic, like me. And there are a lot of martial arts scenes, such as karate and kung fu scenes. That's right. The same martial arts scenes you've seen in movies, I have written them into this novel. Now, I don't recommend that you buy that big, humongous 650-page book the way I just showed you. I recommend you get these babies. That's right. These are the 3 volumes of the same novel I just showed you a few seconds ago. I got my first novel split into 3 volumes in the fall of 2019. That's right. From the fall of 2013 all the way to the fall of 2019, my novel was just one big fat book. But now I've split it into 3 books so that those of you who would like to digest the story in chunks can do so. Moreover, there are plenty of content discrepancies within the old edition of my novel that I feared would contradict the content of my second novel. That's right, I'm writing a second novel, hint hint. By splitting my first novel into 3 volumes, I was able to weed out all the errors that I did not want to allow to end up impacting my second novel in a contradictory, inconsistent, irrational, negative way. So again, I don't recommend that you buy the old edition of my first novel if you wish to know its story. Instead, I recommend you buy the 3 volumes of that first novel. But whether you want the old edition or you want the 3 volumes of the new edition, you can get them on Amazon, and you can buy the latter elsewhere on Lulu.com or BarnesandNoble.com. The last thing I'll touch on about the topic of autism is emotion. There's a huge misconception that autistic people are emotionless, that they are so hyperlogical that they just lack emotions at all. Now, this is completely false and oftentimes very dangerous for the lives of autistic people, because autistic people have plenty of emotions, sometimes even more emotions than the non-autistic people. Indeed, there are numerous occasions where autistic people can be more emotionally sensitive than non-autistic people due to sensory overloads from an excess of light or an excess of yelling or an excess of cruelty, negativity, harshness, etc. So autistic people can be emotional, in fact, very emotional at times. And so this idea that being hyperlogical leads to being emotionless is simply false. Now, it's true that we autistic people tend not to express our emotions as easily as non-autistic people do, but still, our emotions are still here. In fact, I'm about to express one of these emotions right now. That emotion is anger. Want to know what I'm angry about? I'm angry about 3 major pseudosciences that pervade Western culture today. Those pseudosciences are creationism, global warming denial, and vaccine denial. Let's start off with creationism. Now, I'm sure many of you are already familiar with the so-called debate between evolution and creationism. Did humans and monkeys evolve in the sense of descend from a common ancestor, or did God create Adam and Eve as the parents of humanity? The answer is obviously the former, because there is so much evidence to support this theory. We've done carbon dating, uranium-lead dating. We can look at our own history of artificially selecting horses, sheep, cats, dogs, etc. There is every reason to think that these Christian fundamentalists are ignorant and arrogant. Rather than kowtow to their claims that we're the arrogant ones, we should deny their claim that the atheists and religious people who believe in evolution are immersed in some anti-God, satanic, evil conspiracy to overthrow biblical and Western traditions. No, science is just science. Get over it. If you don't like that the scientific evidence supersedes your feelings of joy or reverence or awe at the scenario in which God created Adam and Eve as the parents of humanity, well, I'm sorry to say, but those feelings are misplaced. Reality simply doesn't care about what you want to be true. The laws of physics are not obligated to meet human desires. Now, the creationists might pretend that they're acting on reason instead of emotion by presenting pseudo-arguments against the theory of evolution. The worst one is that evolution is just a theory. Unfortunately, this fails to take into account that there is a difference between the scientific definition of the word theory and the colloquial definition of the word theory. In science, there is a difference between theories and hypotheses, but in colloquial language, theories and hypotheses are synonymous. A scientific hypothesis is simply an educated guess, an idea that hasn't been tested yet. A theory, on the other hand, is a hypothesis that has been tested, that is well supported by strong, compelling, extraordinary evidence that points to the existence of one law in the collection of laws of physics. On to vaccine denial. Now, this pseudoscience might just be the straw that breaks this camel's back, because it really hits me right here in my just as emotional as everyone else heart. I mean, seriously, claiming that vaccines cause autism? Now, let's deconstruct this claim for a moment. Let's assume that it were true, which it's not, that vaccines cause autism. Well, if we go back to the theory of evolution for a moment, let's say that within the human species, you have the American population. Now, a few individuals get vaccinated while the others don't. This means that the vaccinated children develop autism while the unvaccinated children don't. Unfortunately, those unvaccinated children develop mumps, measles, or rubella, and they end up dying. When they die out without reproducing, only the vaccinated but autistic individuals survive. Hence, the American population evolves to become autistic. Remember, in evolution, it is not the individual or the species that evolves, it's the population. So you see, if it were true that vaccines do cause autism, you should still get vaccinated. But these anti-vaccination people, they just don't care that vaccines save lives. They think that autism is somehow worse than physical illness. This is incredibly bigoted and ableist. This notion that autism is somehow worse than physical illness, it needs to be called out. We can't have this running around in society if we have any respect for the reputation of autistic people. Now, you guys might be wondering, why am I going off about these pseudosciences of creationism, global warming denial, and vaccine denial when they've already been debunked thoroughly? Well, I guess I was just ranting because of the irrationalities that not only the older generation, but also my own generation is susceptible to. In the wake of COVID-19, you have my fellow millennials who are doing stupid things, like licking toilets and going to the beach where they can pass COVID-19 to each other, and by extension, their elderly, weak, ailing relatives who can easily die from COVID-19. Now, of course, as a single man, I can't change the world's problems on my own, but if enough individuals thought the same way I did and wanted to contribute to the world in the same way that I want to contribute to the world, then together we can be a collective force that pushes for a revolution towards the Enlightenment values of reason, logic, and science. I'm simply fulfilling my own role as a contributor to this collective force for reason. That is why I am proud to announce the inception of YouTube's very own Skepticism 101. Yes, you'll see YouTube titles that contain the words Skepticism 101. They're taught by brilliant skeptics such as the members of Michael Shermer's Skeptic Society or Michael Shermer himself, but only on YouTube can you receive this course of mine in Skepticism 101. After I post this video today, I will also post 2 more videos, each of which delve into a subsequent course that I would teach after Skepticism 101. The second video I will post after this one will be the first class session of History 01, and the third video I post after this one will be the first class session of Psychology 01. Without further ado, I would like to conclude the very first day of Skepticism 101, and I hope to see you all again in the video that begins the first day of History 01.